So there's always some new shiny tool in the App Store that offers to organize your day or organize your tasks. You don't need every shiny tool, because every tool that you add to your toolkit, you have to manage. You've got to input all your little tasks, set up alerting. That's just more work.
Right.
Use the fewest tools that you need to get the job done.
Right. And it doesn't, like Carolyn said, it doesn't have to be the newest thing. The newest thing is so rarely the best thing that you can be doing. And I think a really good example of this is Nagios. I hear some chuckles in the audience.
Knowing.
Hands up if you've used Nagios. Come on, I think most people. That's pretty good. So the really wonderful thing about Nagios is that it's so simple, and it's been around for such a long time. There are other things that have come in and tried to, break into that space a little bit. You got Zabbix and Xenos and what's the latest ones? I don't even know. But there's always these, there's always these things that are coming up, and they're new and shiny, and they promise to make the world a much better place. Nagios has been around for 15 years now. We use it at Etsy. Pretty much every startup that I know that has been successful, that I personally know has been successful in the last few years, started off at some point using Nagios. They may have graduated away to a different system, but it's there. It's the one that works. It's the lowest common denominator, and it really helps you keep your monitoring in one place.
So why? Why is what he's saying true? Because it's so flexible, that makes it hard to configure. But it means you can do so many things with it. If you have a tool that's very specific, you're going to do one thing with it, but then you need another tool to do this other thing, and then you need another tool to do something else, and then eventually you have 10 tools. Instead, you can take Nagios. Once you configure it, it does all these 10 things, and you only need one tool.
Right. The next thing we can do is really start taking responsibility. And this is, I'll suppose, make cringe at me here when I say just take more responsibility. Saying just is very much a counterfactual. It is hard to take responsibility because of the way we're wired, because of those dopamine releases when we have those flicks over to Twitter and we look at stuff.
You control it, though. This is discipline.
There is discipline.
You are professionals. You can do this.
I have a really good tip. Every time, and this is something that I've started to implement in the last 6 months, and it's made a huge difference to my productivity. Every time I feel like looking at something like Twitter or Facebook or something else during the day, I do something completely unrelated to technology. I get up and I take a walk.
That's awesome. That's exactly what you should do.
Right.
Get the blood flowing, clear your brain. Getting up out of your chair and going outside, go get a drink, grab a snack. That's like palate cleansing for your brain, especially if you're stuck on something.
It's kind of interesting that you mentioned going outside, because it's proven that if you just go outside for 20 minutes a day, just for a short walk, it has a very positive impact on working memory. And if we remember one of the slides earlier, working memory, being able to get back to what you were doing, that's one of the key ways of handling interruptions in our daily lives. You don't have to go outside. If it's raining, just get up, get a drink, get a glass of water, walk around your room, just do something and get away from technology. It's another thing that breaks that cycle of reward for things that don't help you very much.
You're also less likely to go for a walk for 3 hours. Whereas if you go to Wikipedia,
you'll know more about hydrogen fuel cell technology than I do after a while. So the next thing you can do is fix your monitoring. Why is my phone still buzzing in my pocket right now? It's because there are things that I need to do to address monitoring at Etsy. And there's things that you all can do to address monitoring where you work. Problems with monitoring lead to something pretty serious called alert fatigue, where you have so many alerts coming in, they're waking you up unnecessarily, they're getting in your way, you end up falling asleep at your keyboard. It's happened, I've done this. But the other side happens too, where you start ignoring alerts.
Yes.
Right? These alerts start coming in, you do one of the worst, what I think is one of the worst things is, if one page comes in, it's probably not so bad. But if 50 come in really, really quickly, oh my God, something bad's happening. How many people here do something like that? Do you pay more attention when your phone buzzes more? I know I do.
It's just you. None of them are raising their hands.
No, none of them. I know, I see one. Okay, there are people. I know you all do it.
You're just not admitting to it.
So, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. If you're alerting on every little thing, then that's bad.
Right.
The other point, though, is alerting on the wrong things.
Alerting on the wrong things. So Theo Schlossnagel gave a talk at Velocity in Santa Clara this year, where he's talking about setting up monitoring. And he aimed it kind of at the more junior crowds, bringing things in. But it's a really good talk that everyone should go see. I believe it's available on YouTube. And he talks about leading indicators of problems and trailing indicators of problems. And unless you know what you're alerting on and how it fits into those two things, your alerts may be way off. For example, leading indicators of problems are supposed to tell you that something bad is about to happen. About to happen. Sometimes pages go off, the problem resolves itself before anything bad really happened, and then you get another page saying that things are okay. Okay. Then you have trailing indicators of problems. Something bad has already happened. But sometimes bad things happen and they fix themselves. And you get another page that says things are okay.
You really need to know what the right things are to monitor. So Avleen had a story that he's not remembering right now, where he was on call.
Yeah.
And he kept getting woken up by this page. And what he realized was that it was a system that was going out of memory. But it was supposed to use all of its memory.
Right.
So why was he getting paged that it was out of memory? It's supposed to be out of memory. The service is still running. So why are you alerting on the system being out of memory? You should be alerting on the service is down. So he gets paged when there's a service problem, not when the system's out of memory.
Right.
So just because you can monitor something doesn't mean you should. That's what that is.
Right. Really pay attention. Think about what it is that's monitoring, what it is that you're monitoring and why it's actually going off. Does it need to? A lot of times it's okay for things like that to go wrong, and it doesn't really matter.
So we did say earlier that interruptions are the job, and they are the job. So that means that you have to have interruptions. But what if you can control when they come in? Ooh, that'd be a superpower, wouldn't it?
There are ways to do that.
There are ways to do that. So if you know that you're going to get interruptions from certain people or certain groups, you can arrange to have times when they can interrupt you. Office hours or a day when this is when you can come and talk to me about these kinds of projects. And that helps to funnel those interruptions into times when you can plan to not be as productive on really deep technical tasks because you know that you're going to get interrupted. And that gives you more time that's uninterrupted.
Yeah.
You have to
can
train
really,
people, though.
Right. And you can really leverage the teams that you're on. This requires a little bit of culture change in a lot of organizations. And we'll talk about two. Let's talk about how you do it, and Carolyn, and then I'll talk about how we do it at Etsy.
So where I work, we're all in one office. So we have an admin person who's the gatekeeper, sits at the front door, and when somebody comes in, he's supposed to trip them before they get to the technical team. He also answers the hotline first. He looks at the ticket queue first in the morning and responds to tickets. So he's sort of our defense at the door.
Kind of the gatekeeper.
Kind of, yeah. We're even weapons. Because he keeps a lot of the interruptions away from the technical team so they can focus. They still get interruptions, but they tend to be interruptions that are focused more on the tasks they're actually working on as opposed to, I just need to help with this one thing, can you help me? Because that goes to the guy at the front door. It really rocks.
So let's say we thought about trying this, and some people liked the idea. Some people said maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's a new way we can have
You're also distributed, so that's harder.
We are. It is, I work, half of our ops team, more than half of our ops team, I think now, is actually distributed around the world, so it's kind of harder for people to come up to us and interrupt us.
That's a feature.
We do use IRC a lot, so people often message me during the day saying, hey, need your help for a moment. That's one of those passive interruptions that I can sometimes ignore for a little while, but I have to come back to it. So we wondered about how we could deal with these things, and we do something at Etsy already that naturally helps. Our ops team is there to not just support the production environment, but also to support the developer team at large. And there's a lot of developers at Etsy. And there's a lot of projects going on at the same time. So what we do is we have two people from our team assigned as designated operations engineers to every major development project. And those people don't necessarily do all the operations work that the search team needs, or that the front page performance team needs, or other teams need, but they are there as sort of the first people that those teams know that they can talk to. It's a very positive thing because those teams then have go-to guys that they can say, I know these guys on the operations team help us, they understand our systems, they understand the work we do. I can go to them and ask them questions. And on the operations side, those people on those teams, they integrate well with them. They understand what those teams are doing, what their requirements are, how their software works, all those things. And the net impact of it is actually that interruptions from those teams are much easier to handle. If I get interrupted by somebody and I have much less of an idea of how their stuff works, how it's set up, what's been going on, they have a question, I may have to go research, find out how things go, how things fit together. And it takes a lot longer.
This has probably happened to everybody in the room, where you're not working on a project and someone walks up to you and asks you a question about it, and you have no idea, where is that? What server is that on? What directory? I don't know. And you have to start from zero. Right. Whereas somebody who already knows that can say, oh, I already know what that is, and can fix it very quickly. There's
a danger here with sort of the Etsy approach, though, is that you can end up siloing specific skill sets. Only certain people know how your search stack works,
yes,
for example.
So you should have some redundancy. Sometimes redundancy is a bad word, but I think it's a good thing as a manager, because I want all my people to be able to go on vacation and not take their phone with them and be paged all the time.
And not only that, but our designated ops guys, we use the word designated, not the word dedicated, because those guys have work, they find the work that's coming in and they engage other people on the team and say, hey, can you help with this? I want to make sure other people know about these systems, so that we're not the only people who have the skills to deal with them.
Plus, you don't want all your institutional knowledge to walk out the door when somebody changes jobs. So if one person knows everything about that one section of your business, and then they leave, all that knowledge is left with them.
There's a special case when you're working in such an environment, and that's handling emergencies. If you're on call, you understand that something goes wrong, maybe your site goes down, maybe a database server crashes, something happens, it's bad. You need to handle it quickly. But it's in a complex system, usually there's not just one person involved with handling an outage. Usually it's caused by multiple events coming in. Usually it's involving multiple people. For example, let's say you're the ops guy on call, suddenly you get a page that your site's down. What was it caused by? Was it caused by a resource exhaustion? Was it caused by a bad push?
Who's awake now? Somebody's awake.
Exactly. So, what caused it? And, going back to sort of our Etsy example, one of the ways we deal with this, using IRC a lot, is we have a channel called War Room. And when something really bad does happen, everybody funnels into this one IRC channel, and we sit there and we discuss, we find out what's going on, what's wrong, and we find out what caused it and how to quickly recover from it.
How do people know to go into War Room?
It depends. People like me who get paged a lot, I do that bad thing where if I'm getting paged very, very quickly, I do pay more attention to it, which I shouldn't do. But other people, like I said, we use IRC a lot. War Room is a keyword for a lot of people that pops up and lets everybody get together. The advantage of this is whoever is driving the outage, whoever's trying to fix whatever's broken, they don't need to go and start finding people, trying to figure out if somebody changed something, if something went wrong. They don't have to go individually interrupt people. Everybody comes together. Everybody is interrupted for a short period of time, but it means that you get to the cause of the problem much more quickly without randomly interrupting people and trying to figure out what's going on.
But the fatal interruption here would be all the people trying to use the service while it's down. So as soon as you have a problem and some service is unavailable, people start calling, they start wondering, oh, what's going on? How come I can't get to this? When's it going to be back up? So have someone who can run interference, whether it's a blog that you're updating when the site's going to come back up, or somebody who answers the phone or stops people at the door. Yeah. So the people who are working on the emergency are not getting interrupted by people saying, when's it going to be back? I really have this important thing to do.
This is also another cultural thing. You need to teach people what to do when something's wrong. You may have users, they may be in your company, they may be external users. How do you get this information out to them so that they don't need to keep calling support, they don't need to keep calling the help desk, trying to figure out what's going on? There's a number of different ways you can do it. At Etsy, we send out emails internally to the team. We also have a status blog, etsystatus.com, where our users can go and find out about it. Interestingly, though, not all of our users know about this blog. So we have to get that information across to them. We do different things. If the site is completely down, when you try and reach it, it comes up with a link that goes to Etsy status, or we may automatically redirect you there. When there is an ongoing issue, we put a little header on the forums webpage. People go there to try and ask other people if something's wrong, if other people are seeing the issue, and they see it right there. They say, okay, I can go. This is a known issue. getting that information out there during emergencies really helps reduce interruptions a lot.
For major sites like Etsy, the internet is pretty good at letting everybody know that Etsy's down.
Yeah.
If you're not a major site and you're more of an internal thing, then your users are just going to start calling.
Yeah.
Either way, having a way to tell people that, yes, we know it's down, and yes, we're working on it, and stop bothering us in a nice, polite way is important.
So another thing we can do is break up large tasks.
Oh, yeah. So if you get a very large, obscure task, sometimes it's hard to start it. Paint the fence. Okay. Are you ever going to get to that, really? Because what color are you going to paint it? Do I have brushes? Do I have paint? Do I paint both sides of the fence? Do I need to sand it first?
Sand the wood down first? What do I do?
There's all these subtasks there. And there's an order, too, because you can't really paint the fence till you have the paint, and you can't have the paint till you decide what color, and then you might have to ask your spouse, because maybe that's the person that's going to decide the color. So breaking this project down into tasks allows you to have these definite little projects that you can accomplish. So you can go to Home Depot and you can pick out the paint color. I've just accomplished something on my project. Right. So instead of looking at the project as the whole thing, you have these little successes, the dopamine release.
The dopamine release. So whether you complete a large task or a small task, your brain rewards you the same way. You feel good about doing it, but if it's taken you a week to do one big task, and you get one little reward for it, you kind of look around like, all right, what do I do now? Whereas if you have a lot of small tasks and you get the same good reward for every single one, of course you're going to feel good about it. You feel better about it. You want to do more.
It also helps with interruptions, because if you get interrupted in the middle of this big project, but you've made it to step 2, you've still accomplished something. You could still say, hey, I made it through the first 2 milestones of the project. That's awesome. As opposed to, I meant some nebulous point in this project, and I don't know where I stopped.
I like the next one. Improving our workflow.
Yes, so we used to have all these whiteboards and lists, and everybody had their own way of managing their projects. So I have a 10-person technical team. I work in a national lab, and we have a lot of crazy projects. And what would happen is the people would just take on these projects. So Steve would have this set of projects, and David would have these other projects, and Andrew would have different projects. There might actually be project overlap, and it wasn't clear because so-and-so had a whiteboard, and somebody else had a little file they kept in BI, and somebody else had some other little tool. And this is where projects went to die. They were never prioritized. Nobody ever had visibility into everything. So we took the entire workload and we said, here it is, it's visible. And that allowed us to prioritize it. It allowed us to see duplication. It allowed us to reassign things. So maybe the person who wrote it on their whiteboard wasn't the best person to implement that, and someone else should do it, or they should work together. So this allowed the team to communicate better. It allowed them to see the workload. It makes them feel like they're accomplishing something now, because instead of looking at this long list on a whiteboard that's completely dried and will never be removed, they now have this movable thing that they control. It's not I control, they control. The team looks at this and says, okay, here's all the crap we need to do. This is the priority. This other thing isn't getting lost, and it's getting done right now. It also, the great thing is, because our users are all in-house, when they come in and say, hey, we have this high priority thing we need to do, where does it fit in with everything else that we need to do? Because there's all this work. And it's great visibility for them too.
So, Carolyn, this looks kind of like a Kanban board.
It is a Kanban board.
Okay.
And it's loosely a Kanban board, because don't go into Kanban or any agile methodology and say it is a religion and you must do it this way. You have to adapt it to the workflow that works for you. So we were finding that a lot of our tasks were getting blocked. They're getting blocked by outside people. So we're within a lab in a larger organization. A larger organization has a central IT organization that's completely dysfunctional. So as we would be working on something, we'd have to use something from them. Our task would get blocked, and we couldn't do anything. And then it would come to me, and I'd have to figure out how to unblock the task. So we actually created a new column on here called impediments. And so when somebody was an impediment to our work, we stuck them in the impediments column and put a little sticky on there and said, this is why it's blocked. And there'd be a date. And it'd be up to me or the people on the team to monitor that and to try to get this thing moving again. So instead of putting it back in the backlog and forgetting about it, it's still a high priority. It's stuck because of someone else. And then we could still do work in progress and move forward with other tasks, waiting for that impediment to get released.
So at Etsy, we started using Kanban a couple of years ago. And we started with sort of that strict Toyota definition of Kanban, where somebody moves incoming tasks into a backlog, and then the rest of us can kind of pick the tasks that need to be done. We can do 2 at a time, no more, only 2, and we have to see them from start to finish. After a lot of stress and people getting upset that this really wasn't working,
Religion,
we figured that we had to do something to change it. Fortunately, these, like Carolyn said, these things aren't written in stone. They're not fixed. They're supposed to be adaptable. And I still see a lot of organizations trying to force their workflows into these very rigid constructs that really, they don't necessarily work for them.
This is my arts and crafts project, by the way. It's a physical board made with electrical tape and black contact paper, which really helps the super sticky stick. Yeah. Because I've redone this board 3 times. So it is a work in progress. Right. You don't stick to one thing. You figure out what works for you.
Right. So at Etsy, we decided we're going to actually flip this on its head. As we grew, we really needed to. And we changed the methodology. So now incoming tasks don't just end up in like some nebulous thing waiting for somebody to put them in the backlog, figure out when they'll be done, assign a priority, and then the rest of us work on it. We redid it and said, okay, whenever a new task comes in, it's the responsibility of everybody on the team to look at those things that are coming in, talk to the requesters, find out how urgent they are, and be aware of what the rest of your team's doing. Find out how busy the rest of the team is. Do you even have time to do this right now? If you do, when can you fit it in? The beautiful thing about this new thing that we call beer can,
of course, Etsy has to come up with a clever name, don't they?
Is that it really increases, sort of the communication between our team, like the entire team, not just our managers, and the rest of the organization.
That's the important thing about these implementations. It's not about tracking so much the projects. As a manager, I'm saying that, and I'm going to help. It's about improving the team effectiveness. That's really what it is. Because if you can make your team work better together and you guys feel like you're actually getting work done, that's the most important thing. It's not, how long did it take to do this task?
The next thing.
Oh yeah, ask for help. Come on. If you are struggling, if you're working 14 hours a day, go to your manager and tell that person, Avleen.
Yeah.
Seriously, you do not have to work like a dog. You do not have to be online 24 hours a day. Go ask for help. Say you're doing too much. Maybe your manager needs to hire people. Maybe you think that everything's a top priority, and it's really not. And you go to your manager, and he or she looks at your list and says, what? That stuff's not that important. This is the important thing. And now all of a sudden, you have 2 tasks instead of 10.
Right. When you have, hopefully everybody here has one-on-ones with their manager on a regular basis. These are the kind of things that you should bring up with your manager. Say, look, what are the business priorities that I'm supposed to be working towards? How do these tasks that I have assigned to me really fit into those? Which of these can wait? What's supposed to happen? Your manager should really be keyed into helping you work with that.
If you feel crushed by your work, then there's something wrong. Yeah. And you need to be able to talk to your manager. And if your manager's not listening, well, then you have a bad manager. I'm sorry. Because that person is supposed to be there to listen to the fact that you're working too hard and you're not getting anything done. Because when you're working 14, 16, 18, 23 and a half hours a day, you aren't getting anything done. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we've thrown a lot of stuff at you guys this morning, and there's a lot of different ways that we can handle interrupts. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stuff that works for me personally and how I kind of work through my day. So I have this little process I created called Communicate, Validate, Designate. It's a cute little rhyme, it's fine. But what it really says is that when new tasks come in, I need to look at what they are and communicate with the people that are interrupting me and find out, first of all, why they're interrupting me, what it is I can do to really help them interrupt me less. Maybe I can train them to do some tasks themselves. Maybe somebody else is more appropriate for getting stuff done. Maybe they don't know that what they're asking for has already been done. So I really need to, every time something comes in, I stop and I talk to people who want the work done. The next thing is validate. This sounds kind of like common sense. Okay, a task comes in. Does this need to be done? Can it be done differently? Did the person asking for it ask for the right thing? A lot of times people may not know. They may say, hey, I need one thing set up, when they actually, there's a better solution. They need something else.
Last in, first out is not the way to run an operations team.
The last thing that really helps reduce interruptions is this designate concept. That doesn't mean you take work and you literally give it to other people. But talk to the other people on your team. Find out if there's somebody who'd be more appropriate to do it and interact with them. We have systems at Etsy. We run a very large shop. There are systems that I don't understand very well. We have a Hadoop cluster. I know nothing about Hadoop. I wish I did. I wish I had time to learn it, but I don't. There are people on my team who are good at that. And I can talk to them and say, hey, there's this request that came in. Somebody needs more, somebody's noticed that we're running low on space, or the performance of the cluster is degrading. Can you help fix it? And they may point me at some documentation and say, hey, this will help reduce your workload if you just follow these steps. I've done it before. Or they may say, hey, this is a bigger problem. I'll take it. I'll help you out. These three simple things actually have reduced my interrupt impact probably by more than half.
This kind of reminds you of getting things done. Anybody familiar with getting things done? It's kind of a simple way of funneling work. So as work comes in, you make a decision immediately. Do I do it now? Do I put it aside and keep track of it? Or do I delegate it to someone else? And it's just a way of thinking about work as it comes in, so it's not just piling up. You're actually sorting it. And it could get more complicated if you're interested. You can look it up online, getting things done.
Stress management.
This is so important.
Might sound kind of simple, but stress is one of those things that really, really impacts how you handle interrupts.
How do you deal with stress? And at what point, what's that tipping point where it's just enough stress versus too much? Avleen, how about you?
I used to be able to handle stress pretty well in my younger days. And I find it hard these days. When there's a lot of stress, when there's too much stress, I just kind of crumble. I need help. I talk to other people. I talk to my manager. I say, there's just too much going on, whether it's personal stuff, work stuff, whatever it is. There's only so much of it that I can really take. And I find that level, for me, personally, is quite low. How about yourself?
Mine's a little higher. I discovered in college that if I took a really low course load, I kind of blow off my homework. I got lots of time. 12 credits, I got all the time in the world to do that project. If I took 19 credits, man, I was on the dean's list because I had to get that done. I didn't have that much time. 19 credits, that's a lot of credits. So I learned that if I have just a pretty good level of stress, I can produce tons. If the stress drops too low, then I start to get kind of lackadaisical and I got lots of time to do that. So I like that level of stress. It really pushes me.
Finding that balance, finding where that fits in for you is very critically important. A lot of people may intuitively know it, but actually realizing and thinking about it goes a long way towards helping.
And knowing when you've gone over the edge. Yep. So I have a team of people, and I can see they're all different. One of them starts to curse a lot, and he's sitting at his desk, he's going, get it, and then the phone rings, goes, hello, this is Steve. Okay, And he hangs the phone, I know that he's over the edge. And another person, they just go, yeah, and you give them something new, and you just say, yeah. Each person's different, and I see that stress point, and I realize, okay, you and I need to sit down because there's too much on you, or you don't know where to begin. Something is causing you to shut down. Figure out what your triggers are so that you can be self-aware, so you know when to go to your manager. Don't wait for your manager to see the stress in you and say, I see sweat on your brow. I think you're stressed. Try to figure it out. You're adults. When do you become less productive? Do something about it for yourself. So this is me. A good manager, I think, should run interference for people. So if you've got 10 projects and you feel like, oh my God, they're all a high priority, and I tell you, well, I think these 2 are really important. The other ones can wait. My job is to tell you, if somebody comes to you about these other 8 things, you send them to me. And then I'll tell them, I said that wasn't as important as the other things. Because you need to be able to focus on the things that are important and not feel like, well, I don't want to let anybody down, and they really think it's important. Well, they think it's important. Everybody thinks their problem's important. And they are, to some extent, but some are more important than others. And so I would like to be the person that allows you to do the important things and runs interference for those things that you don't need to be doing.
Yeah.
And watching for signs of stress, obviously, so that I can step in and say, whoa, you look really stressed. Let's talk about what you're doing.
In the last 17 years, I've worked for a lot of different managers. Some good, some bad. Good.
I want to point out Mike here in the audience because he's an awesome manager.
I've never had one manager that I couldn't go to and say, hey, I'm having a problem. I need your help. Every single one expects it. If you feel that you're not able to do it, try. Just give it a shot. See what happens. It really goes a long way.
It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of maturity. If you can go into your manager and say, yeah, I got too much going on and I'm really not sure where to begin, or I'm kind of struggling with these things, that's a sign of maturity. That's more of a senior person, in my opinion. The person that doesn't come and ask for help, that's the person that is afraid that if they show me weakness, that I will think less of them. No, I think more of them that they come to me.
You can also do a lot of things around the culture in your organization. Sometimes we may not feel empowered to change culture. Maybe we think we're in a very rigid environment. But it doesn't have to be big changes. Little changes can help.
Remember mission control at the beginning? That was a room full of people. If one person tried to make change, wouldn't it be really hard? But if the person tried to change the culture, now you're changing everybody. Now, culture is slow to change if you're trying to change it from the bottom up. But if you bring your manager in and say, look, I really want to be able to do these kinds of things to work. Maybe it's work from home. Maybe it's have some focus time, have no meetings on a certain day. Avleen has no meeting Monday. He blocks his Mondays so that he can focus on that day and have no meetings.
It's great. I just literally, every Monday I have a standing meeting that lasts all day. It says no meeting Mondays. People try and schedule time for a meeting with me on Monday. They don't even look at what it says. They just see, oh, he's busy all day. I'm not going to schedule a meeting with him. I'll find another day to do it. I hardly have any meetings on Mondays. I've given my secret away now, so I'm going to get more. But
oops, sorry.
I'm going to change the name of that task to something that sounds important.
He also has another special case. Because he's a remote worker, he isn't on site at the corporate office every day. He comes into the office 1 week a month, and that's his interrupt week. He comes in the office and realizes, I'm not going to get a whole bunch of stuff done this week, but everybody can interrupt me because I'm here.
Yep. And it's really great because everyone has that expectation. While I'm remote, people, they may send me an email, they may hit me up in IRC. They know that I'll get back to them eventually, but it's not so much real time. When I come into the office, it's great. It's open season on Avleen.
Right,
go interrupt and go talk to me about stuff. And it happens all day long, every day, for a week. And I just write that week off of getting other stuff done because having those interactions, again, with people, that communication really, really is very important.
Now, if you're on the flip side and you're in an office and you have people all around you that are interrupting you all the time, you can influence culture by talking to your manager, talking to your team and saying, look, I really want to focus on this project. So I'm going to wear headphones, on Tuesday and Thursday mornings while I focus on this, or every Tuesday all day, and I don't want to be interrupted except if it's really critical. Or I'm going to go in the conference room, or I'm going to work from home. You talk to your manager. Find out ways that you can be effective and reduce your interruptions. You can change the culture, and it's just getting people to realize that you can be interrupted, just not at these times.
Right. There are other things you can do. You don't necessarily have to influence the culture of your entire company. There may be things you can do in your team. For example, in the operations team at Etsy, we do write a lot of software. Just, the operations engineers do it as part. It's just kind of par for the course. It's required. Sometimes those things, they're not short things. They're not small things that we can just get done in a few hours. They may take a few days to get done. So we came up with this concept. We called it Code T, where where an engineer, as long as they're not on call and they don't have other critical stuff pending, they can spend any day that starts with T, Tuesday and Thursday, working solely on this one thing. They have to let the rest of the team know that they're going to be working on it so that everybody else can help out. On those days, they can just kind of hide themselves in a corner and work on stuff, ignoring all the interrupts, getting these things done. And we added some provisions to that. For example, after 3 of these days, you have to present what you were doing to the team so everyone can see what's going on. Little things like that, just talk to your manager. They can really help you.
What you want to do is you want to create a culture where you enjoy coming to work in the morning. If you get up in the morning and you dread going to work, that sucks. Change it.
Yeah.
Talk to your manager, do something to make it a better place to work.
Is anyone else here a remote employee at a company?
Woohoo,
whoa, way more hands than I expected. That's awesome. Okay, I'm a big fan of remote employees. It's like 15. It's crazy. So, not only do I have interruptions at the office, I also have interruptions at home in my personal life. People need me to do things. There's expectations. I coach soccer in the evenings. I have to do things during the day, around the house. Find ways that you can really work with this. Set aside blocks of time where you won't be required at work. It may be a lunchtime when you're supposed to get up and walk away and do these other things. But really look for those opportunities where tasks are not going to clash so much.
Yeah, as someone who works in an office, when I do a Google Hangout with him to work on something, there's always a cat in frame.
Should have had a slide of that.
Yes.
So, in the making of this talk, Carolyn came to the Etsy New York office in September for 2 days. We've been planning this talk for about 7 months, 8 months, maybe longer.
I've been doing that. I don't know what you've been doing.
I've been getting interrupted a lot. I had people talking to me all the time. But she came up to the office for 2 days. It was a Tuesday and a Wednesday. And we realized there was a problem. It was when I was in the office, people interrupted us a lot. It was an expectation that I had set up.
Yeah.
I was constantly, as we were sitting there typing, anytime I couldn't find a meeting room to go hide in, people would come up and say, hey, can I talk to you for a moment? What are you doing? I'd say, I'm doing slides for a velocity tutorial on how to handle interruptions better. And people would be like, oh, shit, sorry, I'll come back later.
You guys can use that, by the way. That worked really well.
It's great. But it was hard. This is a constant thing that happens all day long in our lives.
Yes, and trying to work around life, especially certain people's lives, it was very challenging because there's so many interruptions in life. I know we both have full-time jobs, we both have families, spouses, activities, and just trying to get together to write this talk. I have a bald spot right here from ripping my hair out from working with.
So one of the things that I knew that interruptions were impacting my workload, but this really, really brought it home, like how badly they really were.
Yeah.
There's a little test I like to do. I like to encourage everybody to do it. That really helps you figure out how much these interruptions are impacting your life. Find a song.
Not Thriller.
Huh?
Not Thriller.
Not Thriller. Not a long song. Something around 5 or 6 minutes long is good. Something you like, but not your favorite song. Something that you don't mind listening to for a while, though.
You will learn to hate it.
And start playing it. Just hit play, and every time you get interrupted, whether it's by a person, you get paged, a pop-up on your screen about an email, any kind of interruption you have, restart the song. And see how long it takes before you are actually able to get to the end of the song. I described this to people that I work with and others, and one person came back to me and said, hey, I tried this one morning. I wasn't able to get through the entire day without finishing the song. An entire day!
So assuming a 5-minute song, that means that person was interrupted every 5 minutes or sooner.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And this is hopefully something that can really help you realize where your interruptions are coming from and how bad they are on you right now.
And this test is less destructive than shutting down your laptop and restarting it between every task.
Yeah. Okay. So again, we've given you a lot of information. We've piled all this stuff on you. I've explained what I do. What are the ways that people can really start on this, Carolyn?
Don't go back and try to change everything. Go back and look at what is the number one interruption that destroys your focus during the day. What's the biggest thing you can do that would make you more productive and give you more focus?
The next thing I think you can really do is think about those self-destructing urges, those things that make you want to break the work that you're doing, go look at something else. Think about whether you use social media or not. I haven't used social media during work very much in probably the last 18 months. I was a prolific tweeter. I was on it all day. Because it's easy, there's a lot of really interesting people I follow, and everybody always has something really cool to say. But like our work, that never ends. Really think about where those are coming from and find ways to set them aside where they don't distract you and don't drive you to them.
And the third thing, talk to your manager. Go talk to your manager, get that person involved, say, hey, here are the ways that I feel like my day is scattered and I'm getting interrupted a lot. What can I do? How can I reprioritize?
I just want to ask one question. Since the start of this talk, how many people have looked at some kind of social media? Twitter, Facebook?
Be honest.
Something?
Honest.
See? Yeah.
Really?
There's more people than that.
I don't believe that.
All right. Any questions?
Come on.
Yes.
Regarding the war room methodology, is there a certain method that's most effective? Like we use a few different methods. Sometimes it's getting in a room together, or it's a conference bridge or IRC. In your opinion, is there a most effective way to handle the war room scenario? So
the question is, going back to the war room scenario and how you get together and talk about things, which methodology is best? Is it IRC? Is it a conference bridge? Is it something like that? We did an interesting kind of experiment at Etsy. We've done it 2 years in a row now, where during one of our meetings, we used, with all the distributed employees we all use video conferencing. And we basically go around the room and everybody says one word. And we have to try and make a sentence out of it. It's fun. It's kind of a cool thing to try and do. And we do it during the meeting. And it takes, in our team, I think it took, like 20, 30 seconds, something. It's fairly quick and it was fun. Everyone liked it. And then we changed and we all joined an IRC channel and we said, let's do the same thing, it took a lot longer. There weren't visual cues on when can I speak? When is it my turn? Has that other person spoken? You could read the text, but there's you're missing body language. It just adds a lot more. But at the same time, at Etsy, we do use IRC so heavily that we're aware of this and we think about this all the time. How can we improve the communication between people? I would say that whatever methodology you use right now to communicate with people, find ways to build on that. Find ways that everyone is comfortable with. If it's a conference bridge, I've done that before at other companies too, that can work. There is a little cost in everybody getting together at the same place very quickly, whatever system you use. It really is a case of finding the thing that fits best in your organization and try different things. Any others?
In the back?
Every place I've ever worked, the interruptions come from the top. They come from the C-level, the founders. And those are much higher priority, or seem as much higher priority than anything anybody else is working on. Do you guys think about that?
That's my job. I feel like I'm the crap sponge. So stuff comes from the top and I have to filter it. And if I'm not filtering it and it's hitting the technical team, then I'm not doing my job. Because they only need certain things. And if a priority comes from above, I don't care who you are. I'm sorry, John, I know you're really high level in your company. But if you come to me with something that's crap and say, I need to do this right away, I'm going to negotiate with you heavily because I feel like I need to defend my team and make sure that they are doing the things that are important. And because he has a pet project, I'm sorry, I'm picking on you again, in his company, doesn't mean I should drop everything and do it. And it happens. It happens everywhere. It happens to me where my director comes and says, oh my gosh, we need to do this now. And I think, oh God, no. And so there are many ways that the manager can deal with it, but the manager should be dealing with it. Yeah. And if it's getting all the way down to the technical team and it's influencing the morale and hurting the team, that manager's really not carrying their weight.
There's a question in the back up there.
How do you coordinate monitoring needs and kind of systems knowledge between your operations team and your different functional feature teams, such that operations isn't really bottlenecking and your teams don't have to know the audio or know
right.
strat lines?
So this is really interesting, and I'm going to answer your question in a way that you're probably not going to like. So the question was, how do you make your operations team not be that bottleneck that's constantly interrupted and work well with sort of the functional teams so that they're not just constantly depending on you to know, make changes in Nagios, know Graphite, things like that? And the answer is actually you don't. One of the things that we do is at Etsy is we actually encourage those functional teams to learn Nagios, to learn how to send their stats to Graphite. And it's really the only way that we can scale. Otherwise, we would be drowning in interruptions all day long. I run a little sort of project at Etsy. On Thursdays, I have something called Ops for a Day, where people from development teams can come into the Ops team and they can learn about a system, whether it's monitoring, metrics collection, CDNs, whatever people feel interested in. They can come in and I'll spend the entire day just doing nothing but working with them and teaching them how to do these things. And it has a really net positive impact. Those people go back to their teams and suddenly they're able to create their own alerts. They're able to create alerts that only go to them and I don't have to be involved. They're able to send metrics to Graphite or whatever we're using at the time and understand where their metrics are going to break down, where they're going to cause performance problems for the system and work on those more efficiently. So kind of not answering the question the way you wanted it to, but this is really what we do, and it's the one thing that we found does end up working really well. It does involve that letting go a little bit, trusting people to do it. And a lot of times when people make changes, other people outside the operations team make changes to Nagios. Instead of just doing blindly, they'll send us a pull request. We keep everything in Git so we can look over what they did and say, yeah, this is great or this is not. Have you thought about how you're going to be alerting? We try and push that knowledge outwards so that other people really think about these things too. Any other questions?
So earlier in the talk, there was mention that one of the strategies you use for keeping big uninterruptible blocks of time is to schedule meetings earlier in the day. You also mentioned that you run a distributed team with people in different time zones.
Yes.
So how do you reconcile both those things?
carefully. So the question is, with people in distributed time zones, how do you reconcile running meetings early in the morning versus whatever time zone people are in? We have people on the West Coast, East Coast. We have people in Europe. Fortunately, so far, we've been kind of lucky in that the people who are in Europe, they're enough hours ahead in the day that if we have a morning meeting sort of East Coast time, it's late enough in their day, and it's okay for the people on the West Coast. If you're truly global, that becomes a lot more difficult. And one of the ways that in researching this, I asked other companies how they do these kinds of things. A lot of people actually try doing these meetings in the morning thing, and they actually break the meetings up into multiple meetings. And they say, the people in sort of Asia, Australia, those times, we'll have a quick get-together at one time, and the people in, the East Coast will have a get-together at another time, and then people will kind of reconcile the information and get that word out to everybody. We also do a lot to try and reduce meetings whenever we can. One of the things we found, when we did our operations meetings at Etsy, one of the most tedious meetings I had been to for a long time, because we would do this thing where everybody was in a room and we would go around the room, everyone would give their status. I may get to talk for 5 minutes out of an hour, and then I have to sit there for 55 minutes listening to everybody else.
You take a nap, you hit your laptop.
Yeah, your laptop out. We actually eliminated that component of the meeting by having everybody send out just a weekly update of what they do. That way everyone's aware of what's going on, what everybody's doing, and it doesn't need to be discussed in the meeting. We can make that meeting a lot shorter and a lot less interruptive.
You can eliminate those. If you're doing Agile, you can do stand-ups instead, and you're talking about what you're working on actively, and you don't have to have a sit-down meeting, because those go-around-the-table meetings, those are just time killers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Question up here.
There was a little bit of conflation of monitoring with alerting, but when you're talking about your phone going off in your pocket, obviously that's the alerting component.
Yep.
When you're deciding, hopefully you're making only the actionable things actually alert you. But what about all those other things? The ones that send email, because you want them to send email, maybe they send too much email, everyone starts filtering them.
Yeah.
They're not actionable enough to raise them to the level of alerting you. What do you do with those ones?
Those are killers. So when you have things like, monitoring comes and alerts you, it's great. You need to know when something's broken, but what about all those things that send emails out? That send emails out all the time? Cron emails. Does anyone here read cron emails? I don't. Bitbucket those. Someone does in the back. I'm sorry for you, sir. And everybody else here is too. How do you deal with those? Again, it really goes back to finding the information you need. It may be fine to store that information somewhere where you can access it later, but if it doesn't need to come into your view all the time, find a way to just push that out to the side. Just find a way, whether it's setting up a filter and just moving those aside so that when something does go wrong, you can go look at those, and the rest of the time just try not to have those.
What you're describing sounds like a log file to me, not email. If you're sending stuff to your email inbox that you're automatically filtering to some subfolder, that's just a log file. Can't you log it somewhere, and then if you need it, you can go look it up? I prefer that over the hundreds and hundreds of emails that I'm never going to read.
Okay, I think we have time for one or two more questions. We go with these. Yeah.
So how do you deal with kind of the other extreme where someone decides that they will never answer your email interruption? The only way to get them is to ask for a meeting, and now it's like a vicious cycle. You're in meetings because people can't take 2 minutes to
answer an email. That's kind of a cultural problem.
Yeah, you can set up a 5-minute meeting. You got that person for 5 minutes. I mean, how much time do you need from them? If you just have to ask them a question, you put a 5-minute meeting on the calendar.
Yep.
It's interruptive, but you got them for 5 minutes.
Right. You're more interrupting them, and it'd be nice if they would, see this talk afterwards and see what they're doing to everybody and to themselves. It's really about education. You have to explain, look, the fact that you don't answer an email, at any point during the day means that now we have to raise a meeting. We have to sit down and talk for a long time. And some people just really like meetings.
I do not like meetings. I hate meetings.
Okay, last question.
So, what's your opinion on the DevOps culture? Slowly coming to a lot of these operations organizations, process automation, agile, these techniques are coming in. What's your opinion? Is DevOps going to change?
What do you think of DevOps, Avleen?
Yeah. So, what do I think of DevOps? So, the question is, how does DevOps play into this? What's the impact it has? How does it help with this? The answer is that it really actually just causes more interruptions because you have more people to interact with, more things to do. But I think if you kind of follow some of these methodologies and explain a lot of these things to other people, that's, I think, where the real benefit is.
You're also controlling the interruptions more when you're working with other teams. If you're just allowing other teams to just sort of smear all over your time, yes, that's a problem. But if you're controlling when you're interacting, it's productivity. You're actually communicating with the rest of the company. Yeah, that's a wonderful. I love this working with other teams and seeing what they do and influencing the rest of the company. IT should not be this separate little garage that's tacked onto the house. It should be part of the whole thing.
So I think we're about to get kicked out. This is awesome. Thank you, everybody, for coming.